Hi, my name is Chad Bernardelli. I'm making this video for EDUC 604, Concordia University of Nebraska, and this video explains the relationship between the engineering design process and gaming. Could be board gaming and online gaming. We're going to explore both. I have tried out games. One of them, which I have prior experience with, that is backgammon, a board game, and another one that I have no previous experience with, and that's a coding game called PolyUp. So let's first take a look at Gammon, and I'm going to explain how I use the engineering design process um, through my 3 attempts at playing backgammon. This is my first game of backgammon, and I see that the opponent is taking a defensive move. They're trying to block me, but I am going to try to be aggressive and get my chips around to this end. Hi, this is my second chance at playing backgammon. My first try I lost. I was trying to be aggressive. This time I built up a big defense here. So what I'm trying to do now, I just rolled a lucky sixes, but their defense is also kind of built up. They're being a mix of aggressive and defensive. I chose a more defensive play. All right, I'm on my third game of backgammon, and I'm doing pretty good. I'm the white pieces, and I'm almost at my base. The black has not a lot of places to move. I have 2 of their chips out, so they have to roll a certain amount of number, a certain type of number to be able to fall in these spaces, and they can't do anything until they get their chips back in the game. All right, so the first game that I played was backgammon, and the elements of the the engineering design process that I used for backgammon. First of all, I had to identify the constraints, and the constraints for this game, one of them is that the checkers are only allowed to move forward. So I have these white checkers, I have to get them down to the other side of the board. I can only move forward. Uh, I can only move them the amount of spaces. I have 2 moves, one for each roll of the dice, or one for each dice. So I can use those 2 numbers from the dice on one checker, uh, you know, move that twice or make 2 separate moves. I cannot move to an area where there are more than or 2 or more of the opponent's checkers in a space. So either I'd have to move a different piece, or there are some situations where I might not be able to move a piece altogether. As far as researching the problem goes, it is necessary to move all the checkers around the board and back to the base. That is the problem. You have to get all your checkers back into the base, and once you have all of them in there, you can start taking them off the board as you're rolling the dice. But that's the goal, is to get them to your base. There are many solutions you can take. You can choose to be aggressive. You can choose to be defensive and build up a defense in the area to prevent your opponent from moving around the board, or you can just start shooting around the board yourself. Or you can try to take a more balanced approach. Ultimately, you can choose one of them as your plan. Ultimately, you will have to likely change things up depending on the numbers that you're rolling. The numbers that you roll might not correspond with the type of plan that you're trying to make, so you will have to adjust mid-game. You likely should try to stick with your plan as best you can, but you would need to re-strategize if that plan didn't work out. So you might want to start off as aggressive, but see that things just aren't working out, and then you have to build a more defensive approach mid-game. So there's a lot of reevaluation that takes place, testing and reevaluation that takes place during the game of backgammon. This is my first time today playing this poly machine, so I need to make the number 5 with these numbers. So everything has to be in a perfect order in order for the end result to be achieved. So I'm just going to go ahead and try this combination and see what these numbers do. And it made 6, so I'm going to have to make an adjustment somewhere. This is my second attempt at this this module in which I need to make 5. So I'm going to run this again, see if it worked. I took a little more time to sit and think about what I needed to do, make sure everything's in order. So I made 5. All right, so I'm attempting another one, and I tried to move the functions around a little bit, but I really learned that things really do need to be in a specific order with this. So I think I got it right this time. 8 minus 3, see the 8 needs to be on top to subtract. And there we go, I have 5. The next game that I played was a coding game, an online game called PolyUp. And this had a lot to do with mathematics and had a heavy focus on coding. Some of the constraints, as far as the engineering design process goes, the constraints that I had to face with this game was that everything needed to be in a certain order, and it had to be a very specific order, or the functions didn't work well. So the numbers and the functions all had to be in perfect order to achieve the goal. And the problem was that there was a goal given at the beginning that we needed to achieve. Either I needed to arrange the equations in a way that I hit a certain number, or I could have um, made things in a certain order to move around a grid in a certain way. So there were multiple challenges that were given with this game, but ultimately everything had to be in a specific order and able to make things work. Um, there are, for as far as possible solutions go, there were a lot of different combinations you could have used to achieve that goal. Um, a lot of different places that the functions and the numbers could have been placed. So it was up to me to work out a potential equation and make sure that all the functions and numbers were in the right order before I would run. So that would be like creating a prototype. Now, by testing the prototype, I would actually run the equation to see if it worked. And if it didn't work, I would have to go back, change the functions around, move them, um, make sure that everything was in perfect working order. I might have to change maybe a plus sign for a minus sign, or maybe it would be a more appropriate to use multiplication and division somehow to achieve that number. So should gameplay be included in a classroom? Um, I think it should. Now, gameplay is great for motivation through engagement. If kids are bored, it's very unlikely they're going to pay attention. And as Scott Herbert said in the video that I referenced later, the TED Talk, um, we need innovators. Speaking of Scott Herbert, he mentioned a couple games that um, that require, you know, some important skills that innovators have, and one of them is creativity. And some of these games, like for example, Minecraft, requires a lot of creativity, and it's an open world game. It's what we call a sandbox game, and it gives students a lot of choices. And another sandbox game that one of my students had mentioned to me before, and it's just interesting to know that my students are interested in these games without me, um, using them in my class already. They're already interested. They're already motivated with them. This was another game called Universe Sandbox, and he wasn't the only student to mention this. And a couple actually. We were talking about astronomy in our Earth Space Science class. Now, another skill that can be used in the classroom as far as gaming goes, you can actually use the engineering design process to make a game, have the students make a game. So they can, they can go through the process of making a game and then test it out with their fellow students, then go back to the drawing board and, change the rules around, change the structure of the game until it is a functional game, and then they can actually play it themselves, and they're more motivated to play it themselves and learn um, through the gaming process. One game that I have played with my environmental science students, my AP environmental science students, was a game um, based on population genetics. It was a game where each student represented a sea turtle, and they would go around to a different island in the room. And at each island, there was a game board, was a dice, there was a stack of event cards. What they would do, they had their turtle that they were using. They started off with a parent turtle card, so they would travel to the game board and work with a different partner each time at each game board, and they would roll the dice to increase their offspring. Now, each player had popsicle sticks that represented different genetic characteristics, and each side of the popsicle stick was a different allele, um, which is one half of a gene that they pass on to their offspring. And they would throw them down randomly, and whatever offspring they gained from rolling the dice, they could have gained one, two, or three offspring at a time from rolling the dice. They would throw down the gene representations of the genes, the popsicle sticks, and assign them to that turtle. And then they drew the event card, which could have involved a genetic change or a mutation in one of the genes for any turtle that had that gene. It could have also been a habitat change or environmental event um, that would have affected the fitness of some of the turtles. So at the end of the game, the goal was to have the most offspring. It's often the goal for, most, if not all animals to increase, well, most animals to increase their amount of offspring. And so that's it. These are my references down here that I use for this gaming assignment. Um, Thank you.